holding a tablet that was written thousands of years ago and being able to read what it says. It's an amazing feeling.
Forget what you know about ancient history. The Babylonians didn't just invent math, they built their world with it. From bustling marketplaces and grand construction to settling bitter land disputes, their sophisticated system of calculation was the engine of their empire.
The ancient Mesopotamians, Sumerians, Babylonians, all those people, they wrote on clay. That was their natural activity.
Now, artificial intelligence has decoded Plimpton 322, a 3,700-year-old tablet that reveals the terrifying truth of their knowledge. Stay tuned to the end to discover why this ancient tablet is so mind-bending. The unremarkable treasure. On the dusty plains of ancient Larsa in Babylon, archaeologist Edgar J. Banks wiped sweat from his brow. Banks, the real-life inspiration for Indiana Jones, was not merely digging for treasure, but searching for lost history. As he sifted through the ancient rubble, his fingers found a small, flat piece of baked clay. After brushing off the dust, it appeared quite ordinary, smaller than a paperback, chipped at the edges, and devoid of any decoration. Just a surface covered in tiny, precise markings that looked like little wedges and lines. This was cuneiform, the ancient writing of Mesopotamia, dating back to the reign of Hammurabi, the Babylonian king famed for one of history's first legal codes. To anyone else, it would have looked like a broken piece of junk. Disappointed, Banks tossed it into a crate with other finds. Little did he know, this broken clay would need artificial intelligence to reveal its earth-shaking secret. That simple clay tablet began a quiet journey. Banks soon sold it for just $10 to a wealthy collector named George Plimpton. Plimpton saw its value as a historical curiosity and eventually donated it to Columbia University in New York. There, it was the name Plimpton 322. It was a catalog number, a label, nothing more. For decades, Plimpton 322 sat on a shelf in a quiet university library. Students and scholars would walk past it, barely glancing at it. It was just another broken piece of clay from a lost world, but it was a sleeping giant. If you looked closely, you'd see its secrets were right there on its surface. The front was neatly divided into 4 columns with careful headings. 15 rows contained numbers, but not like any numbers we use today. The left edge was broken, a clean break that happened long after it was written. Someone had even tried to glue it back together. For a long time, mathematicians who studied it thought they understood it. But the real mystery, the truly terrifying part, was hiding in plain sight. The numbers were too big, too perfect, too precise to have been found by simple trial and error. The order of the list was too logical. It suggested a level of mathematical genius that modern historians never believed the Babylonians could possess. How did they do it? What incredible formula or understanding did they have that was lost to history for 3,700 years? The answer was locked in that clay, waiting for a key that didn't exist yet. It was waiting for artificial intelligence. The ghost in the machine. What happened next sounds like science fiction, but it's not. Mathematicians would occasionally peer at it, sense a hidden pattern, and walk away baffled. They could see it was a list of numbers, and some guessed it had something to do with right-angled triangles. But with a crucial piece broken off and lost, the full message was impossible to read. It was like having a key with missing teeth. It just wouldn't turn the lock. So, the world's oldest mathematical mystery was filed away, a curious footnote for experts. The story of its awakening begins not in a dusty library, but in a modern university in Australia. Dr. Daniel Mansfield, a mathematician and senior lecturer at UNSW Sydney, was designing a math course for teachers when he stumbled upon a picture of the tablet. Where others saw a dry list of numbers, Mansfield saw a pattern. The structure was too neat, too intentional. It looked less like a random calculation and more like a carefully designed table. He became obsessed. He felt the ancient scribe was trying to communicate something brilliant, something that had been lost for millennia. To solve a 3,700-year-old problem, he turned to a tool of the future: artificial intelligence. He teamed up with his colleague, Dr. Norman Wildberger, who had himself invented a new form of trigonometry based on ratios instead of angles. Their partnership was perfect. Wildberger had the new mathematical theory. Mansfield had the ancient enigma. They fed the AI a feast of data, the known numbers from Plimpton 322, thousands of other Babylonian cuneiform texts, and all the rules of their base 60-number system. They taught the algorithm to think like a Babylonian scribe. Then they gave it its main task: to rebuild the broken piece. The AI began to work, cross-referencing patterns, testing probabilities, and searching for the missing numbers that would make the entire table make sense. When the results came back, Mansfield and Wildberger could scarcely believe what they were seeing. The AI didn't just guess. It used pattern recognition across thousands of cuneiform texts. It revealed that Plimpton 322 was originally a masterpiece of 38 rows and 6 columns, a vast and powerful mathematical tool. But the real shock was its purpose. This was the world's first and most accurate trigonometric table. Trigonometry is the math of triangles, vital for building pyramids, surveying land, or navigating by the stars. For centuries, we credited the Greeks with inventing it, a claim that was not substantiated until over 1,000 years later. But here it was, in ancient Babylon, and it was better. Our modern trigonometry, which originated with the Greeks, utilizes angles and is based on the circle. It's complicated and often involves approximations. The Babylonian system, as revealed by Plimpton 322, was different. It used pure, simple ratios. It was brutally accurate, easier to calculate with, and perfectly designed for construction and astronomy. It was, in many ways, superior. This tiny tablet was a calculator. An ancient architect or surveyor could have used it to effortlessly compute how to build a perfectly straight wall, a towering ziggurat, or to divide a field. They would simply find the ratio of the two sides they knew, look it up on this table, and it would instantly give them the ratio for the missing side. It was genius. The discovery was terrifying in its implications. It meant that a cornerstone of modern science and engineering had been discovered, perfected, and then completely lost to history for over 3,000 years. The stolen theorem. Without artificial intelligence, we never would have seen this pattern. A Greek philosopher named Pythagoras, around 500 BC, discovered one of the most famous rules in mathematics: the relationship between the sides of a right-angled triangle. Every student learns it. A square plus b square equals c square. It was a cornerstone of Greek genius, a gift from the ancient world that built the foundation for modern science and engineering. But that story, we now know, is wrong. The decoded Plimpton 322 tablet reveals a truth that is both thrilling and unsettling. The numbers etched into its clay surface are not random figures. They are a meticulous list of 15 Pythagorean triples, perfect sets of 3 whole numbers that obey the famous theorem, arranged in a precise, descending order. This systematic catalog proves a formal, advanced understanding of number theory. The Babylonians weren't just dabbling with the idea. They were mastering these triples with stunning accuracy over 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. This wasn't a lucky guess. It was a deep, sophisticated understanding. The tablet's 15 rows are a clear sign of intelligent design. It was a working tool, a reference guide for masters of their craft. The Greeks formalized the theorem, but the Babylonians were using it. And their method was, in many ways, more brilliant. Our modern trigonometry, inherited from the Greeks, is obsessed with angles. We measure circles and deal with messy, irrational numbers that often force us to approximate. The Babylonian approach, as revealed by the AI's reconstruction, was different. Their calculations, based on pure ratios, were often accurate to a degree equivalent to multiple decimal places by our modern standards, achieving a level of precision that Greek geometry would struggle to match for centuries. It was cleaner, more practical, and brutally exact. They thought in pure ratios, the simple relationship between two sides of a triangle. Instead of calculating a complicated angle, a Babylonian surveyor could simply use the tablet. If he knew the ratio of the length to the height of a piece of land, he could look it up on this table and instantly find the ratio for the diagonal slope. No approximations, no complex conversions, just perfect whole number accuracy in their base 60 system. Imagine the power of this. An ancient architect building a ziggurat or a canal didn't need a sophisticated protractor. He had Plimpton 322. It was his cheat sheet, his calculator, guaranteeing that every corner was perfectly square, every slope perfectly measured. It was trigonometry stripped down to its most powerful and practical essence, a system of pure precision lost to history for millennia. The implication is terrifying. A mathematical discovery of earth-shattering importance was not just made, but perfected and put to daily use, and then somehow vanished from human knowledge. It forces us to ask a profound question. Why? How could something so valuable, so advanced, simply disappear? The answer may lie not in the quiet halls of academia, but in the violent, chaotic dust of ancient battlefields. Knowledge is fragile. It can be burned, buried, or lost in the fall of a city. The Babylonians had a tool that could build a world, and we forgot it for 3,700 years. What else have we lost? The surveyor's secret. The decoded numbers of Plimpton 322 were astounding, but they were just a theory. A list of perfect triangles is one thing. Finding one of those triangles etched into the dirt of everyday life is another. And that's exactly where SI 427 comes in. It's another 3,700-year-old Babylonian tablet. But it doesn't look like a math puzzle. It looks like a map, a land survey. On its surface, a scribe carefully drew property boundaries, marking lengths and widths. It was a legal document, created to settle a bitter dispute between two neighbors over a valuable piece of farmland. This humble map is the smoking gun. When researchers like Daniel Mansfield studied SY 427, they made a heart-pounding connection. The angles used to divide the land weren't guesses. They were perfect right angles. The proportions between the sides weren't random. They were precise. To create such an accurate diagram, the surveyor must have used a mathematical system. He needed to know exactly how to lay out a perfect right triangle in the field. Plimpton 322 was that system. Think of it this way. Plimpton 322 was the ancient equivalent of an engineer's handbook, filled with flawless formulas. SI 427 is the field report showing those formulas in action. The surveyor likely knew Plimpton 322 memorized. Faced with a legal dispute, he didn't just pace out the distance. He used advanced trigonometry to measure the land with mathematical certainty. His ruling was unchallengeable because it was based on irrefutable, divine-seeming math. This changes everything. It proves that Babylonian math wasn't just for stargazing priests or temple architects. It was a tool of government and law. The state used it to exert control, to tax property, to settle arguments, and to maintain order. In a society built on agriculture, the power to measure land was the power to control wealth, food, and people's lives. Whoever held this knowledge held immense power. They were the only ones who could say with absolute authority, "This land is yours, and this land is mine." This makes the loss of their techniques even more chilling. It wasn't just an academic loss. It was the loss of a technology that structured an entire society. The sheer modernity of it is breathtaking. We use GPS and satellite imaging to do the exact same thing today, draw invisible lines on the earth that dictate ownership and value. The Babylonians were doing it with clay tablets and razor-sharp trigonometry. Their world was measured, calculated, and controlled. Plimpton 4-27 is the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle. It proves that the Babylonians didn't just understand this math, they lived by it. Their entire civilization was built on a framework of mathematical precision that we have only just rediscovered. This raises a haunting final question. We've found two tablets, one a theory, one its practice. They survived by pure luck, baked in a fire, or buried in a collapsed building. They are tiny fragments of what must have been a vast and common knowledge. If this is what they used for simple land disputes, what other unimaginable applications did they have? What else did they know that was lost to the sands of time? Thanks to artificial intelligence, we are only just beginning to uncover the true scale of a genius that was wiped from history. The Silent Library. The Plimpton 322 discovery was just the beginning. A vast library of sealed books written in a complex code is waiting to be deciphered. This is not a fantasy. It is the reality of ancient Babylonian studies. This library is immense, containing over 500,000 cuneiform tablets in museum collections worldwide. For every groundbreaking artifact like the Plimpton 322 tablet, there exist tens of thousands of other clay tablets sitting in museum drawers, silently waiting. They were excavated, given a catalog number, and then forgotten. Their stories locked away behind the intricate wedge-shaped markings of cuneiform script. The greatest barrier has always been time. There are simply too many tablets and too few experts who possess the rare skill to read them, a scarcity that leaves the vast majority of these 500,000 texts remaining untranslated. Deciphering cuneiform is a painstaking art that requires years of dedicated study. A single scholar might devote months to translating just one text, carefully interpreting the ancient language and context. At that slow and meticulous pace, it would take centuries to work through the immense backlog of untouched artifacts, meaning generations of secrets would remain forever buried. Now, artificial intelligence has arrived to open this silent library. Researchers are training advanced machine learning algorithms on thousands of high-resolution images of cuneiform tablets. AI does not grow tired or frustrated. It possesses no preconceived historical biases. It analyzes every symbol, comparing patterns across countless texts at an unimaginable speed. Recent breakthroughs have been stunning, with AI models achieving over 97% accuracy in transcribing damaged texts, and even predicting missing words with incredible precision. What would take a human expert an entire year to accomplish, the AI could potentially achieve in a matter of days. It possesses the power to scan entire archives, massive collections that have gathered dust for over a century, and instantly identify the most significant tablets. It can find hidden connections between disparate texts that a human might never notice, simply because no single person could ever hope to read them all in one lifetime. This is where the sense of wonder begins to morph into a feeling of profound unease. We now know that one solitary tablet, Plimpton 322, held a mathematical secret that forced us to rewrite history. It was sitting on a shelf in plain view for decades, its true meaning completely overlooked. What if it was not a unique anomaly? What if it were merely a single page from a vast, lost encyclopedia of knowledge? I will soon start delivering answers, and we may not be prepared for what it finds. It might uncover advanced astronomical charts that predict planetary movements with impossible accuracy. It could translate engineering manuals that detail construction techniques we thought were invented millennia later. It might even decipher medical texts describing an understanding of the human body that completely defies our established timeline of history. Our entire understanding of the ancient world has been carefully shaped by a narrow, traditional story that credits the Greeks as the founders of science. We have often looked for evidence that supports this narrative and unconsciously disregarded anything that did not fit. AI has no such bias. It is utterly indifferent to our comforting stories. It only sees the data it has been given. The terrifying truth is that history may not be a clean, steady march of progress. It might be a recurring cycle of brilliant discovery, catastrophic loss, and painstaking rediscovery. Advanced knowledge can be completely erased by war, famine, or the simple, relentless passage of time. AI is poised to unlock the doors to this silent library for the first time. It will hand us translations of texts that no human eye has read in over 3,000 years. We will finally hear the voices of the ancients directly, and we must be prepared for the possibility that what they tell us will shatter our fundamental understanding of human history, revealing a past that was far more sophisticated and whose loss was far more tragic than we ever dared imagine. But what if the very origin story of this language is not what we've been taught, and its first chapters are only now being rediscovered? Math that built a civilization. The ancient Babylonians did not just use mathematics, they lived and breathed it. Imagine trying to build a city, manage a farm, or track the stars without calculators, computers, or even paper. This was the daily reality for the ancient Babylonians, yet they didn't just survive, they thrived, constructing one of the world's most sophisticated ancient societies. Their secret weapon wasn't magic, it was math. Their entire world was built on a number, 60. This was the foundation of their sexagesimal number system, a brilliant and flexible way of counting that they used for everything. Its base 60 structure was actually more efficient for calculating with fractions than our modern base 10 system, making complex division and astronomical calculations remarkably smooth. We still live with their legacy every single day. Every time you check the clock and see 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour, you are seeing the enduring power of Babylonian mathematics. This wasn't just a system for scholars. Math was the engine of everyday life. In the bustling markets, merchants used it to calculate fair prices and exchange goods. Scribes recorded transactions on clay tablets, creating detailed records of trades, loans, and inventories. The government relied on this math to collect taxes, ensuring the kingdom's economy ran smoothly. Out in the fertile fields between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, math was a tool for survival. Farmers used precise geometry to measure their plots of land, after the annual floods washed away boundary markers. They calculated exactly how much water was needed to irrigate their crops from the complex network of canals. A miscalculation could mean starvation, so accuracy was everything. Their mathematical genius went far beyond simple arithmetic. They created detailed tables of squares, cubes, and reciprocals, essentially the world's first pre-computed calculators, which allowed them to perform complex multiplication and division with incredible speed. Astonishingly, they understood and could solve quadratic and cubic equations, a feat historians once believed was impossible for another 1,000 years. This knowledge was put to spectacular practical use. Architects and builders used the Pythagorean theorem long before Pythagoras was born to ensure their structures were perfectly square. A famous tablet known as YBC 7289 shows an incredibly accurate approximation of the square root of 2, a number vital for calculating diagonals in engineering projects. Astronomers mapped the night sky, tracking the movements of planets and stars with a precision that would not be matched for centuries. In the end, mathematics was the invisible framework that held Babylonian society together. It was the language of the merchant, the tool of the farmer, the blueprint of the architect, and the calendar of the priest. It was so deeply woven into the fabric of their existence that they probably didn't even think of it as a separate science. It was simply how the world worked. This makes the loss of their techniques one of history's greatest tragedies. We are only now, with the help of AI, beginning to rediscover the depth of their genius. Artificial intelligence has now identified over 300 distinct mathematical tablets from this period, revealing a vast scholarly tradition. And if AI can find this, what other impossible discoveries are waiting in museum storage rooms around the world? The Lost Summit. First, the Egyptians built pyramids. Then the Greeks gave us philosophy and math, followed by Roman engineers, and eventually the scientific revolution. This story is clean, logical, and reassuring. It suggests that our modern knowledge is the pinnacle of a long, steady climb. The truth, as revealed by a small clay tablet, is far more chaotic and terrifying. Plimpton 322 is a wrecking ball swung at the foundation of that comfortable timeline. It proves the Babylonians were using a form of trigonometry over 1,000 years before the Greeks were even credited with its discovery. This single artifact forces a shocking conclusion. Human knowledge does not always move forward. Sometimes it leaps ahead to breathtaking heights, only to collapse and be completely forgotten. Our history is not a ladder. It is a range of mountains, with entire peaks sheared off by time and lost in the fog. This raises a deeply unsettling possibility. What if ancient civilizations achieved intellectual heights that rivaled or even surpassed our own? Plimpton 322 is not a complete textbook. It is one surviving page from a vast library of knowledge that has vanished. We have this one glimpse of their trigonometric genius, but the rest of their system is gone. Was it lost in the sacking of a city? Did it die with the last scribe who understood it? Was it simply abandoned during a famine or political collapse? We live with the arrogant assumption that once a discovery is made, it is forever. But history shows that knowledge is fragile. The great Library of Alexandria, a vault of ancient wisdom, was burned to the ground. Spanish conquerors systematically destroyed countless Mayan books. Countless ideas have been lost to rot, either by war or simple neglect. If an entire trigonometric system, one that some experts argue was more accurate and elegant than our own, could disappear for 3,700 years, What else has been lost? What groundbreaking medical cures died with their inventors? What engineering secrets allowed the construction of monuments we still can't fully replicate? Were there entire branches of mathematics, ways of understanding the universe that were discovered and then wiped from human memory? This forces us to reconsider the very word ancient. We often equate it with primitive, imagining people slowly and clumsily figuring out the basics. But the Babylonians were not primitive. They were brilliant, operating within a different framework that solved complex real-world problems with stunning efficiency. In some areas, they were not behind us. They were ahead. This is a humbling and sobering thought. Our understanding of the past is based on the tiny fraction of evidence that survived the ravages of time. We have been piecing together human history from a handful of fragments and assuming we have the whole picture. The emergence of AI as a tool for decipherment promises to fill in some of these blanks, but it also presents us with a terrifying question. How many of humanity's greatest achievements are buried not in the ground, but in the vast gaps of our own historical record? Plimpton 322 does more than rewrite the history of math. It rewrites the story of human potential. It tells us that genius is not confined to the modern era or dependent on advanced technology. It can flower in the dust of ancient deserts and be wiped away just as easily. If one broken tablet can force us to question everything we thought we knew, it begs the final, chilling question: what other lost summits of human achievement are still out there, waiting to be found? And now, for the first time, we have a new tool to begin the search. Artificial intelligence can act as our guide, not with a shovel, but with algorithms, sifting through the fragments of the past to map the contours of that lost world and, perhaps, lead us back to its highest peaks.